This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
With Anthony Catt just outside the top 5 for the first time in a long while, with Ben Daniels, Clark Williams, Andy T and Nicholas Vaughan Roberts in 10th place. Behind them, it is Mark Mercer in 11th place with Simon Maltby qualifying well, Dave Kirkman in 13th, Matt Cox, Dave Martin in 15th with SJ Dunning, Jake Whittington, James Child, Michael Cook and Stefan Nobis in 20th. Behind those, it is the rest of your field. Those will be on your screen now. So, my pick in this one, I'm thinking we're going to look for Edwards. He's been caught at the post a few times the last couple of races. I think this is his time to shine back again. But with Grillo qualifying so well, Nolan, maybe the outside chance here. Who knows?
Absolutely, and this is one of those tracks where you really can sometimes get that whole shot win. You know, be the first one through the first corner, you're most likely to win the race, and Oran Park is definitely, it really fits that bill. It is very tight and twisty. The only really good passing opportunity is down the front straightaway through the sweeper towards Coca-Cola corner. So depending on how the draft will play out in today's race, that could be where we're looking to maybe see our changes for the lead, because at the way things stand, it should be interesting to see how Edwards will be able to hang on to that lead.
Certainly should be, but all the cars now on the grid getting ready to kick this one off. Be a few minutes before the cars are ready to roll here, but we'll be with you for the entire time. Looking at about 30 seconds, looking at the clock actually in front of me, so a couple of minutes was a wrong guesstimate there by me. Simon Edwards, Paul Grillo, Chris Robertson, the front three. Will Robertson be able to get a third amazing win in 3 races? This will be huge if he can. He's certainly put himself in contention this season with 2 wins. We just lost Chris Morrison. He's had a connection moment there, but engines rev. Be ready for 20 laps of racing here at Oran Park, and green flag flies. Of course, running the moto layout this time, which has an extra little kink in there, designed to kind of make things a bit more interesting for the motorcycle racing that used to happen here before the track closed in 2010. But in iRacing, you'll be able to run it forever as the snake starts all the way down to 1 already. Single filing out there as they head down to the first real corner, turn 2. Always tricky if you get too wide on the outside there, Nolan. You can just get on that grass as we got contact already in the corner. Big crash in turn 1 there. I think Ben Daniels is involved. I saw his car in the middle of it. He was sideways. And based on what we saw there, he just turns in across the nose of the 8T car of Andy T. Gets himself tipped sideways. Contacts Clark Williams. Round he goes. Big chocker. Multiple cars. 5 or 6 involved there. Loads of little shunts. Not how we wanted to start this.
Absolutely not the way we wanted to see things start out today, Rachel. And from the first look at that, we're looking at probably about 15 or so cars in total that got some piece of that, and about 5 or 6 that got spun around. So there was a huge chunk of your field caught up in the front of this one, and already it looks like we've got 6 drivers down to the lane already with retirements. It looks like we already had some more trouble in the back. We had another spin actually, and this was again result of contact. It was Jake Riddington that got shunted from behind by Ashley Blake Hood, and that was right on down through the O'Brien Illumina dogleg, or through Forster's dip, I believe it was, and that was another nasty incident that caught up a few drivers.
Yes, certainly was. It's definitely been a fractious race so far here at Oran Park. As we've got another car sliding in there. I think that was Andy T coming into turn 2 there on his own. Just, well, got sideways through turn 1, ends up drifting the whole way through the corner. If only he'd kept that drift going, that would have been an amazing way through the corner. But no, he ends up having to stop there and let cars through as we've got another one.
And that was
again.
Andy T, and one car up and over against the tire barriers. They were 3 wide down the straight underneath the Yokohama Bridge, and Andy T made contact with James Child, and Vaughn Roberts just caught him as in as a bystander. He's the one that flipped over.
Oh yeah, this is getting crazy here. 3 incidents so far in the first 2 laps. Hopefully this will settle down, but right now, looking at the front here, Simon Edwards, Paul Grillo, super close. Chris Robertson dropping back a little bit here, as Claire Hughes looks to try and pass him. He looks on the other side. In fact, Claire Hughes making that pass there for 3rd place. 2 by 2 there for 3rd and 4th. As Cat gets past Patterson behind them. No pass at the lead. Still Edwards ahead of Grillo. Defensive posture there by Simon Edwards. But the pass made it early there. Claire Hughes makes his way into 3rd place. A little bit of a kick there from Roberts. He just didn't quite get the car hooked into the corner. As 3 will come again. And rather than a straight here, this corner's a little bit tighter on the exit here. You'll see as they take this line rather than the wider straight line, which kinks them in again round here. Another tighter corner there, making it a bit trickier rather than straight. And they'll climb up the hill to the bridge here as the gap has widened a little bit here. Nolan between Edwards and Grillo, but not much at all. Hughes behind them. Will he have time to catch up here? He's making good ground here on Robertson.
He certainly is, and if he can keep that power down and keep things going, he will be able to close that gap. Still got a long way to go, and Robertson stepping that back out again. Another drift That time through, I believe that was the Momo corner that he just slid through with Robertson and that number 17 machine. So Robertson really struggling. He's lost another place to Mark Mercer, along with one to Ewan Pattinson as well. So that number 17 machine not looking terribly pretty here on the opening laps, Rachel.
Yeah, absolutely not. No, it's been a very sloppy run so far from a couple of these cars, but drivers trying to get this thing done here. We've had retirements from Streetley, Vaughan Roberts, T, Kerry, Cox, Parnell, Cook, and Morris so far. This one has definitely turned out to be a bit of a mess, although Peter Parnell, I believe, still running there, just a lap down. The rest of those drivers have formally retired from the series. Vaughan Roberts is actually back out somehow. He's come back from pit road, but he's drifting around here, really not up to pace. Cars all sliding past him here as we look back towards the sharp end. Grillo still tailing Edwards there as Hughes is beginning to close that gap here. We're going to see a three-way fight for the lead very shortly, I think, on lap 4.
Well, that would be a sight to see as well, because right now we don't have a whole lot of action going on up front. Grillo still trying to reel in that gap, but Simon Edwards is continuing to kind of pull that out. That gap is extending a little bit here, but once Hughes catches up, we've seen Hughes be able to make some really good runs for the lead before in these types of races. I wonder if he'll be able to try to make another charge today. He's going to have Grillo in his way first, but Grillo did close the gap through the last corner there. So it looks like Grillo might be a little bit better. Got one car into the wall. Right behind him, that was Clark Williams.
Clark had a great race. He qualified poorly. He was just at the outside of the place where he usually sits, about 8th or 9th, I suppose, at the moment. But he got caught in several of those early incidents. It's really upset that car for him, I think, and it's causing some issues here. Hughes not quite bringing in the gap I thought he might, but if Grillo and Edwards fight here at all, Nolan, this one will wind straight in. I think we'll really see that battle widen up as Hughes will catch them, but as they're running just nose to tail, I don't think we're going to see him really get the opportunity. Katz moved past. No, in fact, we've seen Robertson drop down considerably. He had a bit of a moment earlier, I think.
Quite possible, to say at the very least. And with things shaping up, you got some battles taking place all over the field as there's some near contact right in the back, and everything is beginning to shape up. Drives beginning to according together. Ray Peasley is having a real go with Troy Gottlieb. Those two drivers almost making contact twice in the span of 3 corners. Both times were nose to gearbox. So everything is really beginning to shape up strong as we keep your eyes on that fight for first.
Yeah, certainly are. There is, once again, defensive posture here by Edwards. He's really not fighting Grillo, but you can see just by putting his car inside, he's making that run around the outside for turn 1 next to impossible. Passing the outside of turn 1 just doesn't happen here, because it's a 2-part pass. You want to be on the inside for 1 to get the move done in turn 2. Moving his car to the inside says to Paul Grillo, don't try it. I'm going to sit here. You're not going to have an easy job of this, and I will go slower and bring Hughes into this fight if you want to try it. So Simon Edwards just making very sensible, telegraphed moves really in this situation, I think.
Well, that's what Simon Edwards can do good. Once he can take that lead, he can really hold on to the lead. We've seen this time and time again. That is a car that can really hang on to the lead quite nicely. Looking down the order to Alan Patterson, who's right behind your battle for 18th place. And that is a fight that has been shaping up quite considerably over the past little while. It's about a gag of about 7-6 cars, and this is a field that has really closed in quite quickly, and they've been doing quite a lot of swapping with a little bit of beating and banging as well. And in fact, Troy Gottlieb's nose, remember that contact that I mentioned a little earlier? Well, that nose cone, it is so close from falling off. As we take a look at this onboard shot, there you can see it is wiggling around. It's not going to take much to knock that cone loose.
And then it'll have very cold feet and a slower race car, but that's a secondary concern. I think the cold feet would be a far bigger problem for me as a race driver if the nose cone fell off the car. But up at the front, we've not really seen any change there. Still the similar gaps. We'll move back a little bit through your field and see what we've got going on in this race. 3 cars here. Dave Martin, Clark Williams, Simon Maltby running in that group there. Just behind them, James Child. Back in the 26 car, he's running in 11th place right now, trying to find his way into the top 10. The 3 ahead of him are his ticket. If you can pass any one of them, that'll be a top 10 finish for him. Other cars
and
really very go.
We've had a big incident. Alan Pattinson drifted through the sweeper and has cleaned out Troy Goalie in that fight for 20th. We take a look at it from the air. That blue and yellow car right behind him, sliding through the grass, sliding, and nothing Goalie could do. Plows through him, and that sent those cars further into the tire barriers on the exit of the corner, putting both cars very much out of commission.
Yeah, not a great situation there, unfortunately for him, but these things happen in racing, especially when you get on the grass. So a track like this where there's no real dividing between the corners, you can go off the grass at the start of it, you'll just slide through to the next corner. It tends to be a feature we've seen quite a lot on the Australian tracks. I know on British circuits, you tend to get a lot of division in the grass parts between the circuit, especially a very tight circuit that winds back on itself a lot. That tends to prevent those sort of incidents, but the Australian circuits, they always seem to have this issue. Remember, most famously in the Viet Supercars in real life, that definitely happened.
Yes, very much so, and I think I noticed the tracks like even Mount Panorama is kind of similar. So with things beginning to shape up here, though, we've had quite a few instances further down. Remarkably, though, this top 5 battle has been pretty darn clean, all things considered. So you gotta hand it to these guys for running up front, and right now, Edwards is continuing to maintain that gap up in front, and Grillo still trying to find that way by, so it'll be interesting to see if he can make it work. He's a bit closer this time through that final corner. He might be close enough to strike on Edwards when they get down to turn number 1, but it looks like he's actually backed off of it. Not going to be nearly close enough this time.
Not at all. Things a little static towards the sharp end of your race right now, although well, the gaps are changing, but it's not really changing our result, and it'd be very amiss of me to say that we're seeing something exciting here. It's not. It's the same positions as we saw last time, but we've seen the racing settle down here. It's about lap 9 here of 20. Things have settled in quite a bit, and I think we're looking more the long stretch now. As we saw really the second bracket, as we see Ridlington actually back here in 15th place, the 28 car. Just makes a move there on Blake Hood. Gets his way through. But the thing I've really noticed is this with the races here, Nolan, that have a wider gap are, should we say, our 1 second bracket is less cars. That means the race is less competitive. If there's more cars in that 1 second bracket, everyone's going to be a lot closer to the same pace, a lot more racing. Here is Blake Hood, may have a chance to pass back here on Jake Ridlington. Up the inside, oh, contact there! Blake Hood gets a little piece of the back end there of Team Torpedo's car. But as I was saying, it seems though when we've got less cars in that 1 second window, we tend to see things spread out faster and run this way for some time.
Now that does always shape up though for an interesting finish, and wow, that was a pretty significant impact from Blake Wood to the back of Ridlington, and his nose cone is looking a little bit more secure than another driver who we talked about earlier in this race about that, who was caught up in another incident. Still jiggling that little bit, but so we'll have to keep one eye on that. Because obviously having a nose cone sitting right in the middle of the track is always a little less than preferable. Up front, Simon Edwards still doing a fantastic job at holding his lead, but as always, despite that gap breaking off, usually the top 5, they just can never tend to get away from each other, can they?
No, and the gaps have all come down in general here. I'm not sure what it is, but the gap, though, between Edwards, Grillo, Hughes, Cat, and Patterson have shrunk. And the back 3 there closing up to your top 2 here. We're going to start hitting lap traffic in the next couple of laps. That, I think, will be a big factor in this one, Nolan. And we'll really start to see things change in terms of where they can pass and how they do it. But for now, I think that Edwards may need to get a move on.
Exactly. So Edwards is going to be the one to watch, and fight on your screen that is further down the order between the number 5 and the 34. So these are 2 drivers that have, come together already. That's Ryan Walker and Ray Peasley who are duking it out right now, and this is your fight for 16th place right now. I think what might help with this race is the fact that the track temperature from the 96 degrees that we started at, it has come down a bit to 92 degrees. So as the traffic gets a little bit more, and there's contact, and big contact. Ray Peasley takes out Ryan Walker on lap number 10 in a big accident that happened at the Momo corner. Threw it up the inside. There was no room for him.
Certainly is not. Unfortunately, that will happen in racing sometimes. Ooh, that was going to sting on the replay, I think.
And Neil Stephenson almost made it through, but got collected at the last minute by that. So Neil Stephenson having some issues himself, and oh my goodness, here comes, look at that. clips the back suspension of that number 5, and that was not what you want to see as well. Let's go on board with Stephenson here. He was so close making this out and just hooks right, and yeah, that is unfortunate.
Yeah, it certainly was not a great situation to find yourself in there, as we got a, once again, defensive line by Edwards here. First the lap car's just a corner ahead of them now, as everyone bunching up through turn 2 here, along the straight now towards 3. And we see that change and deviation of the course, so we have that kind of swept inner line. Just tightening those corners a little bit more rather than the straight power out of the exit. And the gap's not opening up as much, though. It does seem once we get after the bridge, though, we definitely see Edwards and Grillo just shoot ahead here of Clear Hughes, making a very big difference for them. But not this time. Okay, it's staying closer again. We're starting to see Hughes just towing those back cars into this front group, and that's going to make things exciting. I think he could be a couple of laps. This is definitely endurance levels of time taken before we'll see it happen, but I think we're going to see a lead change in the next couple of laps.
Well, like I said, as the gap closes down, it sets us up for an even more exciting finish, and we are now in the second half of the race. It's going to be 8 laps to go at the line. Edwards is continuing to close that gap to Michael Cook in 25th, just ahead of these guys, and that is a top 5 train that is certainly interesting to say the least. I think this is the closest these top 5 have been from 1st to 5th since the start of this race, actually. So, but then beginning to shape up as it is, it's only going to be a matter of time before somebody tries to make that bold look. And we've already seen it once today. We saw it in the last race we had here in this series at Oran Park, with cars stepping that back end down through the sweeper and end up cleaning out some drivers. I think it might be a matter of time before we see something similar to that happen to this top 5 group.
I think you're absolutely right. They're getting way too close now for comfort, and I think it's going to boil over in the very near future. It tends to happen that way, of course, but I think it's going to come from Clear Hughes. He's going to look for a move here on Paul Grillo. Grillo, not being a driver, he's too used to racing. Paul Grillo, seasoned in this series, absent for a number of years, but a veteran from the series, knows how to race here. So does Edwards. They're a similar kind of class of driver. I think perhaps Clear Hughes being a little bit newer to the series, and that's not saying much, he's been in the series for about 3 years. Not knowing how Grillo races, this could make this one a little bit dicey.
Well, it's already been getting a bit dicey as it was. You saw Grillo just took one of those corner exits just a little too wide. That lost him considerable time to Simon Edwards and has now put him under threat from Clear Hughes, who is going to be looking around that right side. As they enter the sweeper, he's not going to make that look. Good job on Hughes. He might try to dive it up. He tried, and there's a locker from Edwards right ahead as well as they've hit the lap traffic. And that got a little bit close. I saw that. Hughes, he thought about it. He really did think about it, but decided to wait a bit more.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, well, it's definitely picking up now. As at the back of this group, Patterson here just saying, come on, guys, let's get involved in some racing. I'd love to make some passes here. Anthony Cat desperate to get himself back on the podium as well. It's been a while for him. As Paul Grillo, though, fantastic performance, started in second and stayed there all race now until lap 14. Could have 7 to go before we finish the end of this lap, and I'd honestly love to see Paul Grillo podium or win this thing. It's been so long since we've seen him up there.
Oh, absolutely, and the way he's racing right now, he's definitely set to get at least a podium position. There's RaceSpotTV's own Paul Smith on your screen. He is duking it out in the 36 machine right now, and he is currently fighting it out with Tim Addock. This is again for 16th place, further down the order. So this is going to be a battle that could be getting a little bit dicey, as well as these cars further back. They really are stepping those back ends out just a little bit more, particularly through some of the more sudden cutbacks on some of the apexes.
Yeah, certainly. I think that track usage is going to be a big factor for them as well. Those guys that are really taking advantage of it will really gain some ground, and we've seen Edwards placing his car well. I mean, the guy's got 7,500 I rating. He knows where to place a race car, and he knows how to passively race, and that's one of the biggest traits I think some of these guys do miss. He doesn't have to fight you. He just puts his car in a place where you can't, and I think that's a huge, huge advantage.
Well, knowing where to put your car, that is where it's really crucial, because anybody can try to make that look up the inside, but it takes a good racer to know when to actually make the lunge. And you really need to know where your wheels are. If you don't know where your wheels are, well, chances are you're not going to really know where the other wheels are, and that's going to result in 2 cars making contact and spinning around. So with this experience in mind, it is going to be interesting to see how this will go. The gap has spread out a bit as they make their way past Darren Morris. So with things beginning to kind of space out a little bit more, Edwards, again, has that considerable gap now with 5 to go. I'm beginning to wonder if they'll be able to reel that gap in.
I think they might be able to, but with the way this has been really kind of a slow boil through here to try and get some pace into these guys, I just don't think they've got time. I think it's going to take a little bit longer than they perhaps have, and with this boiling so slowly, these guys trying to eke passes here, looking a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. This is glacial. This is not an avalanche. This is happening over millennia. I just don't think we've got millennia left in this race. This is looking like Simon Edwards' race. He's controlled it so far, unless they're going to pull out the bag on the last lap. AKA, you know, catch up to him all of a sudden. I just don't think it's going to change. We saw them catch up to Paul Grillo, but once they got into that tow range, they've kind of buffered out.
Well, despite the pressure that Grillo has put on Edwards throughout this race, Edwards has done a fantastic job of managing it, not really focusing on that, and trying more to focus on his own race. So it is, of course, kind of thinking the long game for Edwards. That's what he does when he's in the lead. He tries to think, how can I kind of use this to my advantage? Where should I defend? Do I need to defend? So he really thinks ahead. And that's what I kind of like about Edwards. He knows where to put the car. He knows how to hang on to the lead when he has the opportunity. Bit of a top 8 rundown there. You can see top 5 running 1.5 seconds apart. And behind them, Chris J. Robertson, another 8.5 seconds back from Edwards. Got Mars Mercer with 9 seconds back. And behind them, Simon Maltby, a bit 20 seconds back. So from 1st to 8th, a little bit of a gap there, particularly from 6th on back, I'd say.
Yeah, that's what tends to happen on these more kind of, should we say, high-skill racetracks where the time differences become bigger. We tend to see 2s, maybe a 3 if you're lucky, but mostly it's cars running nose to tail or running alone in a lot of these situations and just not really fighting anybody because they're all fighting the time and the track itself. This top 5 being our exception, but they're not really fighting each other either. They're fighting the track and trying to get close enough to fight each other, and it's just not playing out that way.
Well, that gap has closed just marginally between Edwards and Grillo. The gap is just under 0.3 of a second right now. And, well, as I say, that jumps to about over 3. It's about 0.3 of a second, we'll say. So, you know, with this gap beginning to close on in, I don't think a lead change is entirely out of the question. But the way things are playing out, it's going to have to take a seriously brave lunge to get Edwards out of that lead spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we go. Look at this. Move there now on lap 18 by Grillo, pulling out to see what he can do. There's contact there. Oh, big contact with, I told you Hughes would make a move somewhere. Anthony Catt gets the raw end of that stick there as he comes in behind there. Massive closing speed, so partially his fault too, actually. Anthony Catt comes right at the back here. I don't know where he was planning to go if Clear Hughes had stopped on time, because he'd have gone straight to the back of Clear Hughes if Hughes had been braking the right point. The problem is Hughes didn't brake in time, nearly takes out Grillo, and that pops off Catt to the infield on his own, as we'll lose him out of that one. That moves up the car of Ewan Patterson there to the 4th place, as... Where's Chris Robertson? Is he ahead of him? He is! Chris Robertson's up in 5th place now, so that'll be a top 5 result for him if he can hold on with this one. As I believe he might be. I'm not sure. No, he's not. He's still, sorry, in 6th place. I got that one wrong. Looking at our top 4, though. Still Edwards, Grillo now, of course, Hughes and Patterson. Hughes made the first real aggressive jump there, Nolan, but I think Grillo had the opportunity when they were coming down towards 1.
Grillo did make that look to the outside, and you saw Edwards dive way to the inside of the sweep trying to get around. They've caught lap traffic at a very bad time. It's Ray Peasley, and Grillo sliding with 2 times on the ground, and he's going to spin it around and hang on to it, just barely, though. Lear Hughes and Ewan Patterson almost made contact behind them. I think that might have just handed Simon Edwards an easy victory today, and all of that was because they caught Peasley in exactly the wrong spot.
Did I not tell you that lap traffic would be a factor in this one? Narrow racetracks, hard to pass. There's nowhere for them to go. Unfortunately, that happened. Paul Grillo did a masterful job there holding onto it, but he has lost a lot of time, as have the others backing up to avoid the potential incident. And if anything, I think the tap from Hughes there straightened him up. But look at this. Edwards can't believe his luck. after a couple of races of bad luck and either crashing out by somebody else's hand or just getting beaten last time before that, Atlanta, this could be his time. 1 lap to go as they're going to cross the stripe, and he's going to have a good 2 seconds, I think, on the rest of these guys here, and that will be a massive advantage for Simon Edwards. It'll be great to see him come across the line here with a victory after, frankly, too long for a driver who's really competing for the championship in this series. Up the inside goes Clay Hughes, inside Paul Grillo. Going to take it too wide into one. He gets past him, and up the inside dives. Patterson, contact. Oh, he tips himself off the racetrack. That was too optimistic. That's what you get for being a little bit too ballsy, and he just lost that one. Has to lock it up and sit there. Not a situation he really wants to be in, but you did that to yourself by diving up the inside. He is beached, I think, actually. Yes, he is. Whoops. That is not how you want it to go, as unfortunately he is in a terrible spot there. Has to tow the car. Beached on the inside of the curbing. As we'll keep an eye on here. Lap traffic ahead of your leader. No actual tailplane on that car ahead of the leader, so I can't see what the number is on the body as we come through up towards the final corners now. He's moved out the way for him. I was right. It's going to be an easy win here for Simon Edwards as long as he can navigate a single corner of the racetrack. Come on, Simon, you got this. One more corner. That's it. Exit, don't hump the curb. No, he's got it. Yep, Simon Edwards will come home with the win today in round number 7 of the Monday Night Skippy series. Paul Grillo is going to come back in 4th after his little wobble, as Clay Hughes takes 2nd place there, and Ewan Patterson didn't make it home. Chris Robertson did finally take P5 in the end there, so a top 5 for him. Mark Mercer coming home in 6th. I love reading out some of these names. I get to say Paul Grillo and Mark Mercer in your top 6 cars. It feels like it's 3 years ago doing Monday Night Skippys with Will Vincent. I've gone back in time.
Well, sometimes, you know, a little travel back to the past is what you need, and that was so unfortunate for Ewan Patterson. He was so set to get that 5th place finish, or the 4th place finish, potentially even a podium. Was just a little bit too opportunistic, though, and just, the car, it stopped in the worst place it could have stopped. If he had even backed it up by maybe another 2 feet, he would have been good. He could have gotten the car fired and going again, but right when the rear wheels are not on the ground, that is when the car had to stop. So very unfortunate. Didn't get the fight for the lead we were kind of hoping for at the end of this one, but still, it was a good race all throughout.
Said it was. Well, we're going to go to our post-race results, and it is Simon Edwards taking the win here with Clay Hughes in 2nd place. 3rd place, Paul Grillo. Good to say that again on the podium. Anthony Catt in 4th place with Chris Robertson in 5th. Mark Mercer 6th place for Simon Maltby, James Child, Dave Martin, and Stefan Nobis in 10th. Behind them is Clark Williams, Kenny Kiola. I do apologise for butchering that one if I have. Jake Ridlington, Ashley Blakehood, Paul Smith of RaceSpot in P15, Dave Kirkman, Tim Adcock, Neil Stevenson, Ewan Patterson, and Ryan Walker there. Only 18 cars finished on the lead lap. That was quite the upturn there, as we have got a Paul Smith here, I believe, if he's going to be available. I don't think he is right now, but we'll hopefully get a chance to chat to him in a few seconds. We'll have, hopefully, Simon Edwards will come in. He's a regular for the interviews, I think, these days, and with the win, I guarantee he'll be wanting to come in here and chat to us. So, Nolan, this track, obviously not here anymore. This is definitely a tragedy. We're losing all these famous racetracks around the world. Some of these really important places being taken over as land available for housing, and it's just, honestly, a shame.
It really is. I mean, this racetrack in particular, it is a fantastic club track, as this race has proven us. It's a good training ground, too, in all honesty. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got, you know, a little bit of tighter corners. It's got some hairpins. It's got a nice little kink for the first corner. It's got some longer straights in it as well. So this is actually a very good training ground for drivers as well, along with the club track. So it is a shame that we're kind of losing some of these racetracks throughout the world. And it does make you appreciate the ones that are still left.
Yeah, certainly does, and it will definitely show things in an interesting manner, I think, with how we're looking for motorsport to go in the future. Of course, it's definitely shrinking in terms of its financial accessibility, as I'm hoping someone comes for an interview. We have Paul Smith. He is here to join us, finally. Paul
Hello.
Smith came home today. I think you were 15th place today, Paul, from 33rd. Not a bad climb.
Yeah, here you go, being Yorkshire Moses once again from the back, missing all the chaos, getting a hit from behind, and yeah, having a bit of a Monday evening drive there. It was fun.
It certainly looked like it. It was a very busy racetrack out there. Why is this track so hard for people?
Because it's tight, it's twisty. With a big grid like this, you're going to have a lot of checkups and people not looking past their dashboard. So that's what I found anyway. And yeah, just pick your way through and try and do your best for the rest of the race.
That's certainly solid racing logic, I think. No one can really deny that one. Where do you think you're going in this series, Paul? What's your estimate? You've been doing a lot of starting at the back most of the season. Is this your way of making it a bit more exciting for viewers?
No, it's because I've been doing the official races. So the official races finish at about 5 to the hour. So then I just literally jump in here and I don't have time to set a qualifying time. So I start from the back.
Well, there you go. Well, Paul Smith coming on today in 15th place from 33rd. Go check him out on the old Twitch-a-rooney, isn't it?
Yeah, twitch.tv/Smileable.
Plug.
Check me out
Smileable. There you go, Smileable. Well, there you go. Thanks for joining us, Paul. And
Thank you
we'll
very
catch you next
much.
time. Well, we've got a quick chance to chat to Dave Kirkman, 16th here from 13th. Not your best one today, Dave, but stayed in the top 20.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
You can indeed.
Okay, yeah, no, that was a pretty appalling race. Qualified well, up, I think I was 12th or 13th. And then Matt Cox, unfortunately, just gently drove into me on turn 2, which totally destroyed my race. Had to go into the pits. So I ended up being 28th or so, and then just worked my way up and almost got to pole at the end, but not quite. I needed a couple more laps.
Unfortunate, but it's one of those racetracks where it can be either great or terrible. Unfortunately, terrible seems to be the par for the course here at Oran Park. Well, hopefully better luck next time for you, Dave.
Yeah, there's a lot of accidents on this track. In the week there's been quite a lot of accidents because it's such a tight, twisty track anyway. But yeah, it's just a shame. That's just motor racing. Sometimes you're okay and sometimes you aren't, even if you are trying to play it safe and just get the points, really.
You win some, you lose some. Well, there you go. Thanks for joining us, Dave Kirkman, coming on today in 16th place. And finally, Nolan is standing by with, I am very happy to say, this week's winner, Simon Edwards.
Well, Simon, you are once again back in victory lane. I'm sure that is a phrase that you've probably heard so many times before in this series. And it was actually a very dominating performance for you today. You managed to secure a pole position by a decent margin. I think it was about 2/10 that was by. And then have led every single lap to win this race. Was it easy for you?
It's never easy here. Yeah, 2/10 isn't a lot, is it? But around here, it really makes a difference when you're qualifying. I just concentrated on qualifying pace in the practice, so I knew if I could get to the front or stay at the front, that I could defend into T2. Somebody really skilled can get round the outside, and I was prepared to stay inside if that happened with Paul. But then I realised Paul was a little bit slow in I think it's T5, so I just kept making that my corner, if you know what I mean, so that I could get away from him in the middle of the lap, so that he was still trying to catch me back down the straight. So that was my strategy all the way through, and it luckily paid off. Obviously we got a scare right at the end there with Ray, thinking he was doing the right thing, but scared the life out of all of us, and I think caused a problem behind me as well.
Well, despite the slight complications, like we said, you did lead every single lap. You did take the win from today's race. I believe next week you guys are going to the Circuit Park Zandvoort, which should be a very interesting track for these low-powered cars. What do you think you're going to be doing come preparation for next week's race?
I think I'll be practicing Zolder rather than Zandvoort. I think it's Zolder next week, isn't it?
No, it's Zandvoort.
It is Zandvoort. Yeah. Oh well, I made an idiot of myself. I like it anyway. I like them both. I like both of these. Zandvoort's a better track to race on. It's still a little bit tricky to overtake on, but it's a nicer track to actually race on, and you don't get stuck in a train. You can move yourself forwards in a train. as well. So I do enjoy Zandvoort. Zandvoort. Not Zolder, Zandvoort.
Well, Zandvoort is, of course, a much-loved track and should be quite interesting in the Skip Barber Racing Series cars. Of course, a very technical track, much like Oran Park was today. And, of course, before we let you go, we did see that there were quite a few drivers that were kind of slipping and sliding around. The track did seem to come in a little bit more in your favor towards the end of the race. You began to pull that little bit of a gap. How did you think kind of the track played into things today? Because it certainly wasn't the easiest track to pass on, as we saw, even with the lap traffic that you guys encountered with just a couple laps to go.
Yeah, I had a race in the middle of the week, Tuesday or Wednesday, which was a lot cooler, and it was actually a lot easier to race on. And I had a good battle with a guy called Rudy. But
I was in that race.
And the temperature on the track today just prevented that close racing and safe racing. So I think that's what everybody was struggling with a little bit, just the hot temperature.
Regardless, we're hoping that this race at Zandvoort next week is going to be just as exciting as this one was today at Oran Park. Ladies and gentlemen, Simon Edwards, your race winner once again for today. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, Simon.
Thank you, and thank you guys for the great broadcast.
Well, that was Simon Edwards joining us today, the race winner today at Oran Park for round number 7. I've been Rachel White, and I've been joined by Nolan Rempel. You can catch us same time next week as we head on with the series. We'll see you then. Good night.